Time and the bankruptcy of modern science. At its inception, a few hundred years ago, modern science or modern natural philosophy promised to disclose, to expose the order of the universe. The universe as a whole was to be seen as this huge machine that did not really presuppose any mind beyond it for us to understand it. So a symbolic mathematics was invented to account for the universe, the physical universe. So the physical could be understood in its own right without any reference to a god, angels, spiritual entities of various sorts. We could understand, grasp the order of the universe thanks to a modern symbolic language. This language was essentially created by men on the basis of material elements, abstracted in a certain way. Uh, the work of Jacob Klein can be very helpful in understanding how this came about. But here we are at a stage today of modern science, whatever is called modern science, where the discipline is no longer one of order. In other words, it is not exposing a universal order to things. The mechanistic vision of early modern science has been exploded visibly, ostensibly. And what we have now today is, in effect, a science of chaos. Although very often the word chaos is not brought into play, lest it discredit perhaps the whole enterprise of modern science. Nevertheless, what is implied in the vast majority of the debates and discourse spun by modern, so-called modern scientists boils down to that. We have a breakdown of the mechanistic certainties of early modern science. So, take, for instance, the step taken by Einstein. So we have a time-space continuum, pretty smooth, on the basis of which things arise, things move, evolve. Now, it turns out that by relying on telescopes and whatnot, recent, fairly recent, astrophysicists, again, philosophers of nature, have come up with the understanding or the notion that there is no such thing as a uniform matrix of time-space independent of things. Revolutionary notion. So what this would mean is that local material things shape their own context. Now, this notion, of course, finds its parallels in social theories, where we are supposed to somehow create our future, our destiny, or the world. We can change the world one step at a time on a local basis, and we can eventually affect the whole. And so the idea here is that there is no such thing as a general order. Now, what this means, of course, you want to speak in more direct terms, is that there is a general chaos, and order is simply somehow emerging contingently, and so sporadically, one might say, but in any case, um, in um, in a manner that does not involve any kind of necessity on a local basis. So all over the place, there are spurts of, we could say, of um, freedom. And so we could say that there is the ordering of chaos everywhere. But now here's the problem. Um, the problem is that modern science, as we speak of it, does not even begin trying to account for the emergence of order in this respect. Why? Well, because constitutionally it applies to generalities. And now, what it seems to be the conclusion that it arrives at is that order is atomistic. That order is here and order is there and perhaps everywhere, and yet what we have is sparks of order without a fundamental connection. The connection is established on the basis of chaos. So what we have objectively is chaos, but then there seems to be a superstructure of order. Order is a kind of illusion. Now this goes along with the notion that there is no such thing as time. All is present. Now, again, there's a parallel with social sciences, which, and the, of course, the daily life that we live, and with all of its shocking news, everything is present, or everything tends toward the present, so that all that is ultimately relevant is the present, and we are induced to remain in the present. The present ultimately is all there is, and that is a kind of prison for us. There is no escape, no fleeing from the present. Now, if all is present, and yet there is no matrix, no stability, no universal general order, what are we to make of the universe? Well, we are to conclude that all order is an illusion. And so we have a slight problem. We have this modern science that is telling us that there is no time, that everything is present ultimately, and yet it is at the same time telling us that we are making progress, strides into new theories. And science is all about this overcoming of old theories and the innovation, bringing up new theories. Now, there is a slight irony, is there not? For indeed, the old and the new talk about old and new involves time, the notion of time, and certainly of progress. And well, what makes things worse is that progress is turning toward chaos as opposed to order. But it is not just chaos that is involved, because it is the reduction of, well, of order to a phantom that is a function of chaos. So whereas in early modern science, what we call science here, we had the attempt to reduce chaos to order, what we have today is an attempt to define or redefine order as a function of chaos. This is perhaps disconcerting to the mind that confides in the authority of modern science. But we can scratch the surface a bit further and see that if order is a local phenomenon, even an event that is brought about as a result of the universal present chaos, right? We could say that there's lack of order. This lack of order, meaning chaos, is ubiquitous, and there's no moving away from it. So everything is present. It doesn't matter if one thing moves or appears to move in one direction or another. Ultimately, all is relative, right, to our own subjective consciousness. So the subjective consciousness, of course, is a superstructure that arises or is supposed to arise from material that is utterly indifferent to the error of time. Whether things go one way or another, it doesn't make any difference. So, what do we finally have? We have local illusory order. And this suggests what for our daily lives? It suggests that we are not, surprise, surprise, we're not really free. If our ordering of things, justice itself, is but a local superstructure determined by material chaos, which is a constant, then on what grounds are we to be optimistic about social progress, about establishing a free society, about carrying out our local freedom, integrating, let us say, into a web our local sprouts of freedom, so that we can establish this new world, a new world order, in spite of, one might say, chaos, or properly because of chaos, in some crucial respect. On what basis? What tells us that we can do this? And the answer is given in Machiavellian terms. It is the absence of God. It is the absence of a mind of nature. It is the absence of natural teleology that is supposed to allow for the possibility of our doing what we are trying to do. There's no guarantee. Nature does not give us a guarantee of success. It simply opens up the door for us to get organized into this web, establish a new world order, which is an economically conceived world order, which is to say, to be more precise, a world order established on the basis of mercantile principles, mercenary principles, certainly cut off from questions of an ultimate good, beyond itself. Right? This is a possibility that is supposed to be disclosed by cosmic chaos. So, in Dostoevsky's terms, well, if there is no God, then everything is possible. Now, in rational terms, if there is no God, nothing is possible. this is a saying, if there is no cosmic order, well, no local order can account for itself, and for it to appeal to its own web, its own creations, therefore, to account for itself in retrospect is somewhat ludicrous. This is a saying, look, I have power, and this is a proof that I am right. No, not really, not really. And yet, in our topsy-turvy societies, this is what we're raised to believe. Well, where do we really stand? Well, we have forfeited the notion of universal order in favor of that of an absurd universe, so cosmic absurdity or chaos, that allows us to concoct our virtual order, to get organized. Now, we would be simply very ephemeral, flickering sprouts of order. In other words, no order. Atoms, monads, without opening to general order. Were we not connected, and today connected technologically, so in a certain way, according to a technological language, so mechanical, mechanistic conception of everything, that allows us to, well, one might say, pretend that there is order, general order. So as long as we remain within this bubble, mechanistic bubble of an economic world order, should we say, where world is none other than order itself. So as long as we remain within it, we're safe. We're safe because, on the one hand, we don't have to face ourselves as simply fleeting instances, so illusions. Right? And on the other hand, we don't have to cave into utter universal chaos, an oxymoron. Of course, universal suggests that there is a universe, right? There is a cosmos, there is a one order. So the totality is chaotic. There is no unity aside from that of, well, that particulars come to create. The particular, one might say, is a unity, an individual, as we call it. But the individual is completely devoid of duration. And so, one might say, it is an hypothetical point. Right? Now, this hypothetical point is worthless, aside from the society it comes to create, where we all, as atoms, join forces to create a gluey, gooey web or net, right, of fundamentally fabrications, illusions. It's a virtual world. Looked at in scientific terms, this world that we create is a virtual world, which is to say an illusion. So order is an illusion, and we stick to it because the alternatives that are on the table are untenable. What is it? Universal chaos, the oxymoron, utter absurdity, or the flickering atomistic self. So freedom that is only in principle there, but hypothetically there. But in fact, it needs to be fleshed out in terms of the establishment of the new world. So here we have the problem of freedom, of course. Freedom is an illusion that we must all work hard to sustain. Say, well, what about time then? What about time? Are we not making progress in these terms, in terms of establishing this, uh, this the illusion of freedom and sustaining it, working hard to sustain the illusion? How is this related to the problem of time? Well, we would say that time is an illusion. So we have this illusion of coming out of the blind necessity of the forces of chaos. Right? An illusion. The illusion of progress. Science as a discipline of illusion spinning. Theories as modes of discourse that are supposed to account for illusion, justify our illusions. Now, this is a far cry from the original, the inception, right? The original discourse of modern science. Time. Time is a subjective illusion. And, well, you say, well, what about our watches? Our watches belong to the system of fictions. Ultimately, the fictional virtual world that we are supposed to sustain and work toward. So we work around the clock, which is to say that the watch is there for us to assimilate our own movement, our own lives, to this new world order, this new fiction, which is the only truth that we are expected to uphold, to cherish, to work for, to die for.